Do we see threats to businesses trying to raise capital through venture capital like what you do because of the volatility we've experienced?
Short answer is absolutely yes. VC is a risk asset. Obviously, currently in the last 4 to 8 weeks, the risk off trade has really shown up. And again, even in the broader markets, right? People are leaving equities to go into bonds, and that trickles all the way down. And especially if you're in the most risky asset class out there, which is basically VC, inherently it does dry up. It's not forever, but I do think people want to maybe just wait to see how this storm shakes out. Of course, there's tons of volatility in the market and things like that. But yeah, to answer your question, absolutely, there's been let's say a wait and see kind of pause period in VC generally. That said, it's not totally dead. Some things are still being funded. There's a big push into robotics. Robotics is a huge avenue for VC. Defense tech has been a strong theme, especially with this new administration coming in. And you've got the public names like Palantir, and
Hmm.
you've got Anduril and companies like that are, Palantir's worth more than Lockheed Martin. And so I think people realize that technology and the military are going to meet hand by hand, which hasn't really been done before. So there's a lot of enthusiasm in areas like
Sure.
that. But to answer your question in a very broad way, this volatility is not great for risk on assets such as VC.
So, real quick, let me ask you one more question. I want to turn it to markets. And I was talking about your insight into rare earth and lithium. That's a big discussion, especially with the China trade situation still in limbo. How do you make a play with that? What should an investor be looking at? Because it's not as if we just snap our fingers and all of a sudden there's a bunch of American companies, mining rare earth minerals, or am I wrong?
You're bang on. There's actually only one company in America that's mining rare earth minerals. It's a company called MP Materials. It trades on in New York at about a $4 billion market cap. But in the entire country, that's the only company that's mining mining rare earth minerals. And people might wonder, rare earth minerals, so what? What does that have to do with anything? This is crazy. Think about this for 1 second. So 90% of our supply and processing of rare earth minerals comes from China. 90%. If China were a company, it would be broken up and dissolved by the FTC because it'd be a monopoly. It's absolutely crazy. And so rare earths are used from almost every weapon in the sense that you cannot make a submarine, you cannot make a fighter jet, you cannot make a missile guidance system without these very, very valuable rare earth elements. From a practicality human perspective, you can't have iPhones, you can't have most modern electronics, you certainly can't have the computers that we're talking on this channel through. And so China owns 90% of that. And that's why the president's been on a wild goose chase of sorts, trying to go into Greenland, trying to negotiate a deal with Zelensky, trying to take back or take some of these rare earths to offset this $500 investment in the war that we've made. And so that's why it's really important. And we've been actually backing a project for the last couple of years that we're going to be taking public on the NASDAQ this year, in the back half of the year, which we're looking for it to be the second producing mine in America for rare earths.
Ryan, why don't you jump in here? Because I'm sure you've got some questions for Justice.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. I mean, the art of the deal here, we'll call it, quote unquote. It seems to me a lot of that is trying to extract some sort of rare mineral deals with some of these other countries. So besides Greenland, Ukraine, where are other places? And domestically, do you think the policy is going to change where you'll see more mining here? Like, how does that landscape change? And what other countries do you think the Trump administration is going to try to extract a deal from so we can get it from other sources? Because I know that is like a huge national security issue.
Yeah. So great question, Ryan, by the way. And so I think it's two-pronged. One is ultimately we would love for the domestic supply to come online here, but unfortunately that will not happen overnight. So I think there has to be a bridge of sort, right? And so, neighboring countries like Canada have a lot of rare earths. They've got some good, I think they're going to actually have a new prime minister there who's going to be very pro mining and business with any luck. But to answer your question, relying on all of these foreign countries isn't going to fit the bill over the long period of time. There is rare earths in Africa and places like Congo and things like that. But again, you run into the situation where, if you've been following kind of the uprising with the new administration that's come into office earlier this year, there's a huge onshoring aspect to what's happening in our economy. I think what's happened is in the 90s, there was the huge push with Clinton for globalization, which is fine because it brought the cost of everything down significantly. But it wasn't, I would say, until COVID, where COVID happened and everything got shut down. And then we looked around this beautiful country and we're like, holy cow, we actually don't make anything in this country anymore. So that's not sustainable. And so what we're seeing is the reshoring of these things. We want it to happen overnight. It's never going to happen overnight, unfortunately. But I think directionally, in the energy business, for example, Chris Wright on the energy aspect, he's been deregulating a lot of stuff. From the mining portfolio, President Trump is elected as secretary from Newmont Mining, which it probably flew under the radar, but they just greenlit 10 mining companies in commodities like copper, critical minerals, all sorts of things like that. And these projects have been stuck for Ryan, 10 years, sometimes even longer. And with a stroke of a pen, they're now going into production. So there's going to be a real structural shift here. And it's a very exciting time to be an investor, by the way.
But Justus, let me ask you, how do I, as an investor, figure out the timeline for this? Because it seems to me China, and you can use Tesla as an example, China can sit back and go, well, good luck getting your minds up to speed because the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 years, let's see if you're still breathing. I mean, can they wait us out? Who holds the, quote, Trump card in this kind of situation?
Well, that's the real dichotomy, right? And so as soon as we put the 145% tariffs and we've kind of in a way crippled their manufacturing economy, their factories aren't operating at the same levels. They've got, by all the accounts, and even what Ryan alluded to earlier, where they've got goods that want to leave the country, but, we're the ultimate buyer. And I think it's telling that one of the first chips that they used was, hey, you guys are so dependent on our rare earths, we're going to ban these export controls. They could have done 100 different things, but out of everything they did, they picked that. It shows you how screwed we are in a certain way. It's obviously a game of chicken. Both places are going to be hurt, and I think ultimately it's just who's going to blink first. I do think it was very good. Secretary Bessent, who's a very brilliant guy, by the way. He's one of the great financial minds out there. I think he's really good at taking the tension down, tapering it down. I think we're seeing that with his kind of olive branches and things like that. But to answer your question, Adam, I mean, it's we're running a game of chicken. We're running into each other. I think cooler heads are going to prevail. I think that the president will extend the olive branches, and it's just in everyone's best interest to cut a deal. And it's a very long way of answering that. I don't think there is a viable other source because it takes so long to get these things under control, and you can't just do it by snapping a finger. But what I will say is, over the medium and long term, you can inherently see the setup of investing in these asset classes because America desperately needs them.
Ryan?
Yeah, no, I was going to make a bad Canadian joke. We're going to take over Canada anyway, so we'll get all those minerals. Bad joke.
Yeah, my relatives in Toronto won't be happy with it.
Yeah. But another question, I mean, robotics, I think, are so fascinating. I can't not watch every Tesla humanoid video that they put out on Twitter. But I'm curious, I mean, what is the time horizon when we're going to actually see robots in factories like the ones that we see, like Boston Dynamics, I guess, another one, but it's just such a fascinating field. It seems like it's moving very quickly. When does that come on market, in your opinion?
Yeah, so Boston Dynamics is a very interesting company. Obviously, you've probably seen it over the years on 60 Minutes and among other things that they've done a fantastic job. They were actually acquired last year by Hyundai, a car company. So I think there are already plans to start using the critical infrastructure. There's a very popular or famous AI company called Figure AI. It's worth about $40 billion in the private markets. They just cut a groundbreaking deal in the last month or so with BMW. So they want to start using their robots in the BMW manufacturing facilities. I would also dig a little bit deeper, and these are really sophisticated robots that I'm talking about, the Boston Dynamics and Figures. But if you go into some of these, the car manufacturing plants, there is that advanced robotics of sorts, right? Advanced manufacturing, they have the usable arms and things like that. So stage one's already kind of happening. Stage two is starting to happen. As far as it goes with Elon, who's a very famous guy, very smart guy, by the way. He just gave his guidance on his call yesterday, and so that question was posed to him. So, what you keep talking about robots? When are we going to see these robots? And so his guidance was is he wants to have 1 million in circulation by 2029.